Welcome back to another episode of Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival Autumn 2020, a production of Indie Reads TV, and we find our home on CNM TV in Troy, Michigan. Today, we're going to be discussing the work and life of author Barbara Mahase Rodman, who is the grandmother of our featured speaker, David Kuhlein, today. He's done a really cool thing, and he has posthumously published and is promoting her book, which is a really cool story. So I'm super proud to have him with us today. And I push the button. There you are, David. Thanks for coming back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for filling up the room. That's nice.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. I gotta tell you, I was reading the back of your grandmother's book, the synopsis, to a friend of mine today over the phone, because she said, "What are you doing? Who are you talking to today?" And so I told her, and I read the back of the book, and we both decided this definitely on our to be read list. And I remember the reading you did the last time you came. I really appreciate it because we do have a full room. Could you just go back and tell us the story again of how you were able to publish this for your grandmother? Just give us that backstory again.
Yeah, I'd love to. So it started kind of as a search. My mom and I were reading my great-grandmother's autobiography. So that's Babby's mother's. And in that book, there was a bio of Barbara, which said that she had published 2 novels. One was Love Stories for All Centuries, this one here, and then the other, Olas Grandes, which I had never heard of before. So I asked my mom, and she said, yeah, I read it coming off the typewriter. I think that she was in high school when she read it. And so we went on a search for the manuscript. We found the manuscript. We didn't know what we were going to do with it yet, but I read it and I loved it. I thought that it was a fantastic story. I mean, it was all about eternal love and witchcraft, all the things that I like. So I decided that I would type it out, and between me and my mom, we edited the book, and we were looking to publish it through, I sent it to places like Harlequin and Entangled, and I had to learn all kinds of things about romance genre doing that, which is just...
It's an effort, isn't it?
There's a lot, and there are a lot of, there's a lot of big presses out there, lots of small presses, and then because of temporal reasons and Babby, I call her name's Barbara Mahase Rodman, but I call her Babby, same person. But so Babby wasn't doing health-wise so well. She was 92, and we decided that we were just going to independently publish the thing. And we ended up publishing it 12 days before she passed. So between me and my mom,
extraordinary.
Yeah, we got to read her about 6 chapters before she died. And
And she got to hold the book before she passed?
She got to hold the book.
That's extraordinary.
The cover, and her son made the covers.
What a wonderful gift you gave her. That's spectacular.
Yeah, and a gift that she gave all of us. I mean, my uncle painting that, the painting for the cover is really incredible. Like the big painting. I mean, the cover looks cool too, but the painting is huge. And I mean, that was definitely his magnum opus. So it was a big family affair.
That's amazing. I just love hearing stories like that where literature is part of your family core. It makes me so happy. It gives me hope for humanity. So, could you give us just real quickly, and then I'll open the room for questions. Can you give us real quick the synopsis of the book?
Sure. Yeah. So Rena, it's told in first person, and Rena is the main character of the book. She gets a job offer to live at a mansion, which is called Olas Grandes. A lot of place names in Trinidad still have their Spanish origins when the Spanish people came and conquered Trinidad and Tobago a long time ago. Some of those names stuck. So she ends up in this kind of castle-like mansion called Olas Grandes. She starts to fall in love with the master of the house there, and is navigating, kind of her love for the master of the house, while also kind of suspecting him of maybe killing his ex-wife who had drowned mysteriously a couple of years before she moved there. And yeah, she learns that the Wanda, who is the woman that drowned, was deeply involved in practicing witchcraft and finds a lot of her magical journals. And so there's a witch in the book that lives down the beach and becomes friends with Rena. There's her love and her relationship then with Wanda's kind of spirit, not necessarily in a corporeal sense, but just, reading her diaries and such. So.
Sure. Like I say, I read the back of the book to a friend of mine today, and she said, that sounds like Rebecca with witches. And she was just completely enamored, and she thought, okay, I have to go to Amazon and buy this. So good for you. At this point, I'm going to invite everybody to turn on their microphones if you'd like, and we're going to open up the room to questions. So if anybody has questions for David, feel free. This would be the time.
I do.
And yeah, go ahead.
What, if any, was your grandmother's writing background or training?
From what I know, she wrote several articles that were published in the Detroit Sunday magazine, which every Sunday back in, I know at least in the 60s and 70s, there was a magazine that came with the Detroit news every Sunday.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and she was, called like a featured writer or like a guest writer or something. But she taught, she was a teacher when she was working, and she taught at an all-girls school in Trinidad. She taught English, Spanish, and Latin. And so she spoke and wrote, I assume, in all three languages. So
when you found the manuscript, what language was it written in?
Well, there's some handwritten stuff, and I don't know what language it was. But yeah, it's all English. It was all in English.
Okay. Gail, do you know what language the notes were written in?
Well, they were all in English, Mom. I think your mic is muted, but it's just, she writes in this very bizarre, like half cursive, half like secretarial Greg or something, and it's like.
Got it. Okay. It's secret code.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for David? Was that you, Deborah, with your hand up? No? Okay.
Anything goes. You can ask anything.
Go ahead, Julian.
Do you want to write, or have you written a novel?
Oh yeah, I recently finished my first. I haven't written a novel, but I have written a novella, and within quarantine, actually, I started it in April, and I had an editor who was working with me and cutting it as we wrote, and we finished it in June, and about half of it's been published in little magazines and stuff here and there, and I think that it's at a couple of small presses, and I think that it's going to get picked up.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really interesting process. I was more of kind of a poet, and then editing Barbara's manuscript really turned me on to fiction. And I feel like the possibilities within, fiction is just such a huge umbrella already, but there's just so much possibility within fiction. And I think that it spoke to what I was trying to do in writing more than poetry did. So I'm a fiction guy.
What's your genre of choice in fiction?
Well, the novel or the novella I wrote is based on this Austro-Hungarian serial killer, Bela Kish, who was around in the turn of the century, and just kind of uses him as like a figure, and so we kind of follow him through things that, probably never happened, but they happen in the book, and it's just kind of like a stage. Like I'm using him as a stage to kind of put all my own weird stuff in. So I don't know what you would call that. I mean, I'd say it's experimental fiction. I guess I'd classify
Okay.
it as experimental.
Okay, and it's based on like a thriller horror kind of foundation.
Yeah, he's a historical figure. I mean, he was a real person, but
It's like a scary story. It's a murder mystery thing.
oh yeah, it's very dark.
It's very dark. Yeah,
Not for the
not
faint.
for the faint.
Got it. Okay. Does anyone else have questions for David? So I'm wondering, because my husband is also a writer, but he's a very different writer. He's a technical writer. He writes technical manuals. So we have a different approach to the craft. What was it like working with your family and collaborating with family members on one project together? Did you guys all work really smoothly together, or did you run into some speed bumps that you had to navigate along the way? How did that work, working as a team on this?
Well, I think that the way that we kind of delegated different parts of the process worked really well. My uncle was in charge of painting the cover, and then me and my mom did the editorial stuff. So, my mom works as a writer professionally, and so she's, highly skilled. And I'd say that I did more of the kind of like large slashes. I took out huge chunks and pared it down into something that seemed like it wasn't repeating itself over and over. And then my mom really helped with the nitty gritty stuff, syntax, and all the little kind of proofreading stuff. So we all kind of had a very particular job. And there were a couple times when there was a scene when Rena goes into the den and has to she uncovers a bunch of these kind of half melted candles and like wax voodoo dolls and stuff, and we wanted to kind of play up the witchcraft, I think, in that scene a little bit. And so my mom and I worked and kind of just talked it out together. We were in the same room, and I think it went pretty well. Pretty smooth.
Would you agree with that, Gail? Did it go fairly smoothly?
Yeah, for sure. It was a pure joy doing this with Davy, and knowing it was for my mom. It was really special.
So I'm curious, what was Barbara's response when she got to see the book? How did she react to having the thing finished and done in a full package, and what was her reaction?
Oh, I'd say that overall she was pretty thrilled. There was a little bit of confusion sometimes. I had to kind of figure out how to effectively talk to her about the project, because sometimes she'd think that it had already been published, or that it was a short story that she had already published it somewhere else, and kind of forgot that she had written like 3 full manuscripts that could be turned into novels. And so there were different ways to go about it. And so giving it to her, one day it was like, oh my God, like what a beautiful thing. And the cover is so beautiful. And then, the next day she'd say something like, who did this cover? Like, like, you have to talk to whoever did this cover and try to figure out how we can fix it. And like, you say awful things, but it was just, that's the dementia. It's really hard having somebody with dementia. You have to kind of just laugh.
Sure. Well, but at the same time, there are days I look at my work one day and like it, and the next day think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Why did I even bother? So it may not have been dementia.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for David? I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Diana, go ahead.
No, I believe in the other interview, you mentioned that she had written some other ones too. Are you going to publish those as well and work on those with your family also?
I would love to. Yeah, there there are two other ones that I really kind of fell for when I read them. One was called The Golden Caves, and it's also a romance, not so much a mystery, but just more straight romance between a young journalist, an American journalist, who ends up flying to a Trinidadian paper to write, and I think falls for the head of the paper, and is shown these kind of magical caves that light up gold at twilight. And then the other one, called Midnight Moon, which is about a seance. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of similar themes that run through Bab's books. She was really into the occult, reading and studying it. And I mean, I don't know, Mom, you'd know more than me, but I think that it was more of a literary trope. And I mean, growing up in Trinidad, I think that she was, there were witches around, or people who practiced obeah, I guess it's called in Trinidad. So yeah, I would love to work on those at some point. Because I published Babby's book, now I'm getting into writing my own fiction. And so once I start to slow down, or I start to feel, sick of my writing, I'll go back to her treasure chest and open it up.
It's nice to have that treasure chest waiting for you. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Gail, did you have something you wanted to add?
I have a question for Davey, and it's kind of a nice segue, because he just mentioned if he wants to share a little bit about his own writing. It's up and coming.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could say I'm something that I'm writing now, because the Bela Kish novella is already, it's written and done, and I'm just kind of putting it through I'm sending it out and writing cover letters and stuff. But what I'm writing now may turn into another novella. It's kind of a World War II. I'm really interested in the research portion of writing. I mean, even everything from today, I was writing a little section of, I think her name is Pavlinovich, is this Soviet sniper who she killed 309 Nazis in World War II. And so I'm writing from her perspective, kind of in the really bleak portion of this battle in Stalingrad. And something happens in her ear with a bomb going off. And so I was just looking at the anatomy of a rifle and in the anatomy of an ear. And I just love that. I just love I feel like I write and I'm just, to learn, I'm just learning all the time. And so that's what I'm working on now.
Yeah, well, every time when I was a kid, going to the library for me was like a treasure hunt, because we had these, it's not like today with computers, we had a card catalog, and you go and you pull out the little card and it leads you to a book. You have to find the book down the hallway through with a stack of other books and then reach upon a shelf, and it was like a little treasure hunt every time. So yeah, the library is one of my favorite places to go and get inspiration because of that research element.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for David?
I do, but I don't want to monopolize.
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I was curious because I don't know if all of the writers who are out there started out in poetry. I did, many, many years of writing poetry and refining that craft. But I was wondering if you saw a change. Did that impact your writing, the lyrical quality of your writing, or the intensity of your writing?
Oh,
the
yeah.
fact that you were a poet?
Yeah, and my reading too. I really am drawn to lyricism in prose, and I think that there are a lot of, there's obviously tons of differences between verse and prose, but I think that studying, I was trained as a poet, And I think that I'm glad that that was the way that I went into it and not that I was trained as a fiction writer, because I think that, syntax is really hard, and like writing a good sentence, it can take hours to write a good sentence. And it's not something that you realize when you're not a writer. I think, people who aren't writers write great sentences all the time and don't know it. And then once you're kind of thinking about like, oh my God, there's like all of these parts of the sentence, and it's like, this isn't how I want to say this thing. I want to say it, more active, and I want my verbs to be this way. And it's just, I think that it was easier to be a poet and kind of just like give myself a little bit of slack, and like, sentences don't have to necessarily be syntactically accurate. It's like, it's fine. You can write fragments, you can write run-ons, you can do whatever you want. And so I'm a poet in my prose writing.
I find that fascinating. I've written both poetry and prose, and I stopped writing poetry because it was so hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
Poetry is just a lot of work. So I think from my perspective, I had a lot more creative freedom with writing fiction than I had with poetry. So for you to express your opinion and your feeling that poetry was easier, I find that fascinating, because I'll never be able to relate on that level. Does anyone else have questions for David? No? Okay. So thinking about your novella that you're right now shopping, okay? I'd like you to give us a little synopsis of that novella so that when it comes out, we'll know it was you. And then the second piece to this question is, tell us about what you think would be the best attributes of living as a roommate with your main character from that novella.
Oh my God, you wouldn't want to. I mean, it's a nightmare.
So give us the synopsis first, and then tell us about that main character.
Okay, well, so Bela Kish is the name of my novella, but it's also the name of an Austro-Hungarian, most likely practicing vampire who strangled and murdered. They found maybe 23 or 24 bodies, but he was also a tinsmith, and so he kept 7 of these mostly older women, actually, in these metal drums. And so when he went off to fight in World War I, the police remember hearing about all of these metal drums sitting in Kish's yard that everyone thought were stocked with petrol. And there was a shortage of fuel in Austro-Hungary around that time, like 1919-ish, like during kind of the end of World War I. And so they went and they like cracked open the barrels or whatever. And it, of course, they smelled horrible, and they found a bunch of bodies in them. And so they then tried to find Kish, who had been reported injured in, I can't remember where it was, but it was, somewhere in Eastern Europe. It was somewhere in the South West. And so this detective Nagy takes a train down there, stops all communication between anyone who may have known Kish and him, so that they wouldn't tip him off. And when he gets to the hospital where Kish is supposed to be, Kish had switched bodies with somebody and escaped. And so
Wow.
all of the bodies that they found were drained of blood. And Kish had been known to practice black magic by townsfolk, and there are lots of lore obviously surrounding him. And he was never found, except that one of the detectives who was working on the case ended up in New York City in 1923, 1924, and was known for having a photographic memory, and swears that he saw Bela Kish in New York City, like getting on the metro, and was not able to apprehend him. So, of course, there's, lots of suspicion. I mean, I don't know what you all believe, but I think it's very possible that consuming 23 human bodies full of blood, might give you some kind of supernatural power. And so the summary of the book is just that, Kish is, he's a serial murderer who has no morals and murders people, mostly older women for their father's money, and then buries them in the yard or pickles them in jars, and then goes to war and
pickles them in jars
and pickles them in jars. Yeah, because I think that he was also into cannibalism, and so he was probably going to consume them later.
Okay, so two really important observations after that. The first one is,
this is right up my alley. No.
Well, okay, that was going to be part two, but yes, David, you seem like such a nice, calm, mild-mannered human being, and then you're writing all this really creepy stuff. So you've got me like super intrigued already. And then while you were, there you go. And then while you were telling us this story, I'm watching Deborah's face get more and more and more interested. So I don't think I've ever seen Deborah that interested in a story before.
I'm definitely going to be waiting for your book to come out. Yes,
cool.
I will be one of the first in line.
Nice.
So David, I'm making a formal request. When the book is released, please contact us again through the Facebook page or through my website. Let us know so that we can help you promote and get our hands on a copy and read it. Okay.
Awesome.
You've already got some built-in readers here, so make sure you contact us when it becomes available.
Yeah. And story on its own. Oh yeah.
The subtitle.
I'm sorry, Julian.
The subtitle. It's Pickled People.
Subtitle.
Yeah, I was going to be Bela Kish for Halloween and strap a bunch of little pickle jars to my arm, fill them with mud or something.
That's just so creepy, David. It's so creepy. So creepy. And Deborah's just going, okay, how soon is this book coming out?
Yeah, well, human, all too human, right? I mean, it takes all kinds,
Yeah. Well, paranormal's on the bottom of my list of stuff to write. So does anyone have any last questions for David as we are going to wrap up our episode today? Anyone else? No? Thank you so much for coming. David, I really appreciate your time and your storytelling, and I'm so grateful that you were able to work with your grandmother's writing and bring it to life for her. I just think that's just the greatest in tributes. And I'm so impressed by your desire to do that for her. And I just really want to commend you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And Babby thanks you. And we're all very appreciative of this platform, and for all the people in the room now, and for all our future YouTube watchers as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate your time this afternoon. Again, Barbara Mahase Rodman is the author. Olas Grandes. Did I get that right, David?
Olas Grandes.
Olas Grandes. Check out the book. I will put a link to it on our Facebook page so you can find it. You can also connect with David. There it is. Hold on, let me stop sharing my screen for a minute. There it is. So I will put a link to the book on Facebook after we're done here so you can find it, and you'll also be able to connect with David there too to learn more about his upcoming creepy stuff. We're going to have so much fun with you, David. You have now been indoctrinated into our tribe and you're stuck with us now. So, you know, now you're stuck. Part of the family.
Sounds good.
So thank you again for sharing your grandmother's work. Really, we really appreciate that. This has been another edition of Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival Autumn 2020, a production of Indie Reads TV. We find our home on CNM TV in Troy, Michigan. Thanks again, everybody, for coming. David, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.